The title of this webinar is Social Enterprise Building Opportunities, and we have 3 presenters today. Our first presenter will be Dorothy Penner with the Canadian Community Economic Development Network. Second, we'll have Kyle White with Co-operatives First. And third, we'll have Dana Lutz with the Learning Exchange.
Okay, folks, it seems as though we have hit the 10 a.m. mark here to get started. So I have the honor of being the first presenter this morning on this webinar. And I want to thank Megan and the MPRPLC for organizing this for us here. It's a great opportunity, and I'm glad that you're all taking time to listen to what we have to say. Hopefully it will be of value. So my name is Dorothy Penner. I work for the Canadian Community Economic Development Network in the Manitoba office. We have our initiative here, Social Enterprise Manitoba, and we are a national member network that consists of nonprofits, cooperatives, social enterprises, and individuals and some for-profit businesses. We have about 90 members in Manitoba, just in our Manitoba chapter. And our members are brought together by work related to community economic development. So their work is all the pieces that we think are necessary for an inclusive and sustainable community and local economy. So our members' work ranges from topics such as affordable housing, access to childcare, food security, employment opportunities for folks, employment and training opportunities for folks facing barriers to employment, as well as community development such as the neighborhood renewal corporations in Manitoba. And so how we function, well, here's our vision on what we do. The way that we work is we often compare ourselves to functioning the same way that a Chamber of Commerce functions, providing learning events and capacity building for our members, providing communications and information sharing from across Canada as well as internationally. We have some pro bono volunteer matching services through a Spark service. We do a fair bit of policy work representing our members to the 3 different levels of government. We don't deal with the federal issues in Manitoba. However, we work closely with our members in relation to municipal policy as well as provincial policy. And then we do social enterprise work. We have our Social Enterprise Manitoba is a new initiative that we launched a few years ago. It provides development support to social enterprise, those that are starting and those that already exist, primarily to nonprofits that are interested in the work, as opposed to the sort of social entrepreneur bent that some folks are doing. We generally work with organizations that are looking into social enterprise. We do this through coaching and connections, as well as a small business development grant for organizations that want to pursue social enterprise. The other piece of the work is that for the last 3 years, we have been partnered with the province of Manitoba for the Manitoba Social Enterprise Strategy. This is a strategy that was co-created with the community that we led. CCEDNet led the community side of this. And it is meant to strengthen the ecosystem, the policy and programming ecosystem that social enterprises are operating within in Manitoba. And in particular, it's focused on work integration social enterprises. So those that are providing job and training opportunities for folks facing barriers to employment. This is seen as a priority for the province as this one type of social enterprise, as well as a strength within our membership. So we've been working on this initiative since 2015, and these are the 6 areas that we are making investments and programming decisions within, looking to support the environment, and we're looking to get more jobs for folks with barriers as a means of poverty reduction. Of course, this is a small slice of the work and a small slice of the target, and actually probably won't come up much today. So my presentation today will look at since I'm starting, I'm going to do a quick overview of the concept of social enterprise and some of the places that we have found it to be applicable and where it's succeeded, and then look at on a policy-wise what we think is a easy win when it comes to using existing policy supports that are targeted to other sectors and finding ways that we can leverage those for social enterprise support, providing some examples. I can't see your questions right now, so if they're coming in, I'll have to rely on Megan capturing them and relaying them to me. And just so you know, here is our member poster. So these are the types of organizations that make up our membership. This is half of them, and then that is the other half of them. You'll recognize some of those organizations, and we range from big to small to different corporation types, but we're all bound together by a commitment to inclusive communities as well as inclusive local economies. So when we're talking about social enterprise, how we operate here is that we're looking at nonprofit organizations or for-profit businesses owned by nonprofits that generate sales revenues to achieve social, cultural, or environmental goals. You'll see I'm putting up here a spectrum of a sort of, on the one side, the traditional nonprofit relying on donations and doing their programming through that, ranging from fee to service, and then on the other side, the straightforward profit-seeking and privately owned businesses. And we're looking at these two places in the middle is where we see the fit of what the work that we're doing, with some nonprofit ownership, but a bit more of an orientation towards market and fee-for-service than traditional nonprofits, but with the social piece of, or the social or cultural or environmental impact hardwired into the organization in a much more significant way than your traditional community corporate responsibility. So that's kind of what falls into our bracket when we consider, and then we often present this as as sort of a demonstration as to where we expect the return on investment or the return to come from the work that our social enterprise members are doing. And obviously this is flexible to and bends here and there based upon the work that's actually, the actual work that's being undertaken. And there's a proverbial kind of statement that it's often, we call it the dueling purposes of social enterprise. So the dual purpose of a financial return and a social return, but also the dueling purposes of trying to balance that financial return against that social return and come up with the highest impact. So there's 4 areas that we look at where social enterprises sort of can play a role and where we've seen them step in into a local market, into a local economy. And the first is market need. So the cases that I have here, I apologize for the cases that are all rather Winnipeg-centric. That is where the strength of our members are, but we definitely have, there definitely is movement in rural Manitoba as well, and I'll try to make sure that we focus on that. But the St. Norbert Farmers Market, this is an instance where you have a bunch of local food producers who need to get their food to access, and other artisans that need to get their food to market. And this is a nonprofit that exists for that purpose. Many other farmers markets would fall into this. The West End Cultural Center is in the West End of Winnipeg and has a mandate to provide culture to the community as well as run a concert venue. And 10,000 Villages, some folks will be familiar with the Mennonite Central Committee's retail operation, where they are taking products that are made by artisans from across the world, particularly in lower income countries, and providing them access to Canadian markets and to international markets they can sell to. The other thing that we see social enterprise playing a role in is with financial sustainability. So most folks are familiar with the thrift stores that are around, run by the Mennonite Central Committee or run by Salvation Army, or the Habitat for Humanity's Restore. These are retail locations that, while the thrift stores often provide the service of low cost goods in low income neighborhoods, at the end of the day, they are a revenue source for financial sustainability for the parent organization, particularly in the case for Habitat for Humanity Restore. There's an environmental bent to the work that they're doing, but it also is there to provide more revenues and revenues that they control a bit more. The third social enterprise model or social enterprise way of acting that we're familiar with is ones that are more mission oriented. So Fort Light Alive is in Winnipeg and is dedicated to environmental conservation as well as education. And so they do a whole bunch of programming there related to that, but again are running fee for service in all those entities with a combination of some granting and some government support. L'Arche Tuva Cafe, similar to actually the Sawmill Cafe. I threw the Sawmill Cafe in there but didn't get a picture because it's actually in Boissevain. And we've done some great work with them over the past year getting to know those folks. But again, these are 2 cafes that exist to provide employment opportunities for adults facing with developmental disabilities and to provide a community space for them to be in the community and participate. And lastly, the Sawmill Cafe. The Manitoba Theatre for Young People. That's pretty straightforward. It's a theater, charge tickets, but they want to get folks into theater and the benefits that come from that. And the last one we focus on, and again, this is because of the social enterprise strategy and the strength that we have in Manitoba, as well as the need in Manitoba for poverty reduction. We do have acute problems with poverty in Manitoba. is the social enterprises who are providing employment and training opportunities for those with barriers to employment. So this is, so Diversity Foods is the food supplier at the University of Winnipeg. Manitoba Green Retrofit is a fee-for-service contractor that does property management as well as other maintenance work, primarily contracting with Manitoba Housing. And Imaginability is a workplace for adults with developmental disabilities as well as a community place for them. So those are this is kind of where we see the spread of where social enterprises can provide and fill gaps within communities and within the local economy that cannot be filled or aren't as filled as well by traditional business, and how we can have community members come together, identify needs, identify gaps, and come up with a sustainable solution to them that also isn't dependent upon one person. That way there's organizations behind these things, and there's a bit more longevity and resiliency to this. That way if one person decides to leave town and they happen to own the only shop that was providing service X, Y, or Z, then you're not left without that service, but in fact the organization responsible for it has the capacity to continue keeping it going. When looking at some of the policy decisions that governments can make regards to social enterprise and how we can see it grow, there's a lot, but I want to highlight an easy one, and one that we think is low fruit and we've been working on through the social enterprise strategy, and that is using our existing business development supports that are already out there and ensuring that social enterprises have access to them. So notably, I'll point out sort of Community Futures. We have worked with Community Futures before. They are a federally funded business development, organized business development entity that is across Manitoba. There are various offices, and they're already providing these services of coaching as well as business development supports. Some of them are able to provide loan guarantees and granting. And this gets at two of the areas that we are attempting to work on with the social enterprise strategy. That is, we want to see increased capacity for social enterprise leaders and community leaders who are interested in doing this work. And we also want to ensure that they have the necessary capital and financing to get that work done. Social enterprises, due to their nonprofit structure, are often not able to access traditional financing mechanisms and traditional financial institutions. Therefore, there needs to be different products tailored to them and often from different sources. The grants that are provided through and some of the loan guarantees and other work that's provided from places like Community Futures can play this role and can provide the right money at the right time. So there's two ways that we can see how this can be opened up. How we can get access to these already existing supports, and that way we don't have to rebuild the wheel here. So the first piece is ensuring that, and I don't think I made a slide for this, which is unfortunate. So you're just gonna have to listen to this part. The first piece is that we need to make sure that nonprofits, there's not a policy barrier when it comes to who's eligible to access these services. So generally there isn't, but often it will be only for-profits are able to access certain business development supports. And we want to see that opened up to nonprofits and social enterprises so that they are able to access the existing business development supports and take advantage of those investments that government is already making. But there's more pieces to it than just the policy up front. There needs to be training in place for the economic development officers and the other business development officers so that they understand what the social enterprise model is, so that they don't send the person packing and saying you should go somewhere else. That's not what we do here. And so they can provide the necessary supports. And then it needs to be communicated to the community and to the social enterprise community and the nonprofit world that they are able to access these existing business development supports. That way those groups actually know and they can go there. So we're encouraging a baseline tracking for any of the business development organizations that we're working with, so they know just how many nonprofit groups are getting in touch with them about social enterprise and can see how well they're able to serve those folks' needs. And the benefit is that this work will ultimately go on beyond what we are capable of doing. So in my role as the project manager for the social enterprise strategy and being the policy manager here at CCEDNet, I'm privy to much of the social enterprise development that is occurring in Winnipeg and Manitoba. But I had a great story. This actually just happened last week, where I came across an article in the CBC about a greenhouse, a small greenhouse type structure that had been set up in Churchill to provide food there. For those who will know about northern Manitoba, we have massive problems with food security and the correlating costs that come from lack of food security, notably to our health department. And then when I looked into it further, it turned out that Community Futures Manitoba have been the one who supported it. They provided the business development support as well as some of the granting work for it. So this is an example of what can happen, that even in our market where CCEDNet is privy to a lot of these conversations, if we can get the existing business development organizations to start doing this work, you can start to see these examples popping up in other places, and it really can expand this and get it out across the province. And I'm pretty much running out of time here, so just kind of to conclude, here is a short list that I threw together of all the business, or some of the business development organizations that exist in Manitoba and working within Winnipeg and other regions here, and some are rural, some are urban. But this is just a quick putting them through for what I was familiar with and had on hand. There are many more. There will be different ones in your jurisdictions, but I think this demonstrates the breadth of opportunity that can come from having these organizations supporting and understanding the social enterprise model and taking advantage of the infrastructure that's already there. And that is my 15 minutes, and I'll pass it off now back to Megan. Thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a good rest of your day, and we'll take your questions later.
Okay. Thank you, Darcy. So I'll get you to stop sharing your screen now, and then our next presenter is Kyle White.
My name is Kyle White. I'm the Education and Engagement Lead with Co-operatives First. We're joining you guys today from fairly warm and sunny Saskatoon. And I'll give a little bit of an overview of our organization, what we do, how we came about, and finish off with a little bit on one of our success stories that also kind of incorporates some insights into the policy environment around cooperatives. So Cooperatives First isn't necessarily a social enterprise, but we like to think that all cooperative businesses do function similar as social enterprises, maintaining a financial viability, but also meeting social needs identified in the groups that they serve. So a little bit about who we are. So Cooperatives First is a business development organization. We're a nonprofit, and we're mandated to work across Western Canadian rural and Indigenous communities. We're funded by the co-op sector, and all the services that we provide to communities are in kind. When we do work with groups, normally those services usually take the form of some form of pathfinding services, different workshops, but also access to tools and resources that help groups build co-ops, raise awareness about co-ops, and enhance the profile and understanding of the co-op sector. We like to think that a lot of the work that we do helps communities, and that cooperative businesses themselves help communities. When people get involved with co-ops, it's a great way to get introduced to business development in a business environment, raising the capacity of those that are in the communities, and communities tend to be healthier when folks are engaged in economic activity like this. So I want to give a little bit of a background on where we come from, because it's very important to how we kind of operate now. The Cooperative Innovation Project took place at the University of Saskatchewan at the Center for the Study of Cooperatives, and it started back in, I think, 2013. It was a 2-year project funded by Federated Cooperatives Limited, and the project asked, is the cooperative business model still relevant? And if so, why aren't we seeing that many new cooperative businesses being built? We saw tons of cooperatives emerging in Canada at the turn of the 1900s, more throughout the 1940s, especially here in Saskatchewan, and not that many since the 1980s. So is this an indication that people aren't thinking that co-ops are relevant? And that project looked at over 2,200 communities, hosting community meetings, conducting surveys, and working with administrators that had the pulse of the community. And the results basically showed that, yes, cooperatives are still relevant for Western Canadian communities. People do value community-based solutions to economic development and business development problems. But understanding of the cooperative business model had decreased significantly. The project found that about 26% of rural respondents, and 41% of Indigenous respondents could not identify what a cooperative was. Those numbers doubled when you took away the common examples that we see every day in the co-op gas stations, grocery stores, and the cooperatives, insurance, and credit unions. So when people didn't have a good understanding of how a business model functioned and how it could meet their local needs, there was very little evidence they were going to use that model to organize a business to help the community. So in response to that, Co-operatives First was created, and our funding comes from the cooperative retailing system. So that project heavily influenced our operations and our services, and this slide shows basically our process. And all of our services fit within what we've identified as the process for setting up a cooperative business. Everything from Inspire, which involves looking at the ideas, talking about economic development, what's missing from the community, what opportunities exist, and how can we best meet those needs and capitalize on opportunities, right through to exploring that business opportunity, creating an entity that can deliver services and create economic activity, through to having a thriving business that supports communities. And we've added Build, which focuses on building capacity that we know from this project is missing in Western Canadian communities. So a lot of our services do focus on advising communities, providing workshops that are oriented to completing the necessary steps to building a business. Everything from hosting facilitated meetings that talk about business models and opportunities, through to setting up a governance structure, costing out the business, and incorporating the cooperative, through to board of directors training. Some of you may be aware of the governance course that we provide in partnership with the Centre for the Study of Cooperatives at the University of Saskatchewan. Our Build services are really catered towards the economic development community. We have workshops that equip those supporting business and economic activity with an understanding of the cooperative business model, supplying them with tools that can help them better support their clients and expand their services and service offerings. So that's what we do in a nutshell. I wanted to focus a little bit on one of our success stories. It's the Food Forest and Learning Center. And this was the first project we ever worked on. And a wonderful person named Maggie Blue Waters came to us from Montreal Lake. She had recently reconnected with her community as she was part of the 60 Scoop here in Saskatchewan. So she grew up in Vancouver Island, but had family roots in Montreal Lake in northern Saskatchewan. She came to us with a passion for gardening, with a passion for traditional foods, and a passion for reconnecting with culture and connecting people. She refers to this now as her journey for reconciliation. She understood the cooperative business model from her time on Vancouver Island and thought that it would be a good fit for reconnecting people with each other and reconnecting people with traditional foods and medicines. Giving people an ownership in an entity, an organization, or a business is a fantastic way to facilitate a better connection, and a sense of ownership goes a long way in encouraging someone's participation in ongoing activities. So she privately funded a good chunk of this organization and brought together two families, all from Montreal Lake, who I guess did the initial stages of development with us. We worked with 6 individuals to incorporate this cooperative so that they could provide something more tangible to folks that would want to join their cooperative down the road. She privately funded some of their early operations and acquired about 50 acres of land on Lake Manitou, which for anyone who's visited that area knows it's an absolutely stunning place in Saskatchewan, and the lake is known to have healing properties that attract people from all around the world. So in addition to this food forest, they also have a learning center. And they acquired this when Maggie contacted an Anglican bishop as a church was sitting idle in the community of Viscount. The bishop gave the church to them for a very low price, as long as Maggie promised that they would achieve some social good by using this church. And this has kind of been a hub for food preparation, for family safety. A lot of activity really happens at this learning center. A lot of learning, a lot of teaching, and a lot of reconnection. And all of this is based on the use of traditional foods and traditional medicines, things that grow organically in these 150 acres on Lake Manitou. So the name Food Forest comes from Maggie's granddaughter, who, when she first saw this plot of land and learned that all this food naturally grew here and all of it could be harvested and used by people for traditional purposes, she said, wow, Nan, Grandma, you've really got an actual food forest here. So that's kind of where the name came from. But they weren't without their challenges, and some of those challenges are really indicative of some of the policy issues facing cooperatives in Canada. Because cooperatives are governed provincially, there are many differences in local legislation. So, for example, in Saskatchewan, the requirement for minimum members and minimum directors is much higher than the rest of Canada. We need 6 members instead of 3. This doesn't sound like much, but it does discourage small businesses from forming in niche markets. Additionally, we have issues with housing, limiting the number of options and ways that housing cooperatives can incorporate in Saskatchewan, where this doesn't exist in provinces like Manitoba or Alberta. And Maggie hit quite a bit of frustration. The process of incorporating a cooperative often takes quite a bit longer, not just because you're organizing more people than in a sole proprietorship business, but because working with a corporate registry on incorporating a cooperative can be quite a hassle. It took them about 2 months to register their name and comply with the regulations set out by the Information Services Corporation, and this did hinder some of their operations. It's something that we see quite frequently when we work with communities across Western Canada. The process of incorporation is intimidating, and often having regulations that govern incorporation that are a bit restrictive can hamper some innovation. So that concludes my touching on the food forest, as well as my presentation. So I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to share this with you. Happy to answer any questions, I guess, at the end. I'll turn it back over to Megan.
Perfect. Thank you, Kyle. Last but not least is Dana Lutz, and I'll let you get set up.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm excited to be here, and thanks to Darcy and Kyle. So I'm ending the presentation just by talking about a little bit about my organization, the St. John Learning Exchange, and then about our journey over the last 6 years with social enterprises. So just to give you a bit of context, like I said, I'm coming from St. John, New Brunswick, and St. John has 5 neighborhoods. We call them priority neighborhoods, where there's a high density of generational poverty and a low labor force participation. So you can see this is a graphic from an initiative here called Living St. John. They focus on education, health, and employment with the goal to end generational poverty for families living in these 5 priority neighborhoods. So the St. John Learning Exchange is located in one of these neighborhoods, and we serve clients across the city. So that goes nicely into who we serve. The Learning Exchange was founded in 1984 with the original mission to improve adult literacy rates in St. John. So we had a reputation in the community from this for literacy and also GED programming, so general education diploma programming for adults looking to write their high school equivalency. 10 years ago, we got into skills training in addition to this literacy, the literacy mission. And that came because of a need identified by the learners in our programs for next steps after they finished the GED. We wanted to offer a more comprehensive wraparound service delivery model for the people who are accessing our programs. So after venturing into skills training in the form of workplace essential skills, social enterprise kind of began organically off the side of our desks. It was the next logical step for us after the academic and skills training to offer individuals a place to work on their skills in an authentic work setting. So all of the programming and training in the businesses focuses on employment retention. So rather than helping individuals get a job, as an organization, we're focused on helping individuals gain the skills they need to keep a job. And by doing that, reducing generational poverty. So many of the individuals that we work with here at the Learning Exchange have practical barriers such as criminal record, transportation, gaps in employment, patterns of short-term employment. But in spite of these, it's actually the soft skill challenges that often pose the biggest barrier to people keeping their job. So these numbers are from last year, looking at communication, attendance and accountability, and adaptability and problem solving. Here's a fairly linear model of what our wraparound support model looks like. I say linear because in actual reality, people kind of move through this in an individualized way. So somebody might come, starting with the work link side of what we do, which would be an employment assistance service, and then decide that, maybe they need to build some skills, and so they go through a workplace essential skills program, which involves training in social enterprise, or they go back to stepping stone programming in our community. So a really special aspect of working in St. John is the strength of our community here and the ability to partnership, and certainly we see that in our service delivery model. We rely on our community partners all the time to offer programs and services that we don't. So you can see in the middle of this model how social enterprise is at the center, and we'll kind of get into that later. But just keeping in mind, even within this comprehensive wraparound service delivery model, people sometimes will leave the organization and then come back and start again, just depending on their life circumstance. So this is a look at our social enterprises here at the Learning Exchange. And like I said, it's been an evolution since 2012. And all of these have kind of evolved in response to needs of the learners here, and then also the need to want to employ and train individuals in an authentic setting. I'll leave this up as I talk about each social enterprise. This kind of gives a timeline of how things have happened. So we started our first social enterprise in 2012, and it's a cleaning company called Voila Cleaning. So it was started by a staff member and then also a learner in one of our academic programs, and started as a residential cleaning company. So now if we look at Voila, and I will touch on this a little bit later, it's grown quite a bit, but it did start even with that training mission. So individuals were employed and were training in the business. So Stone Soup is one of our bigger social enterprises, and then Voila is one of our bigger social enterprises, and then we also have Stone Soup Catering. So Stone Soup started as a classroom project. We wanted to bring cooking and healthy foods into one of our classrooms. So as a class, they began cooking, they began learning about recipes and healthy foods, and then that eventually evolved into a business. So now Stone Soup is a catering business. We also offer a school food lunch program where we provide over 300 lunches a day to school children in our community. We run a cafe in partnership with our local YMCA. And we are launching a new cafe as well in 2018. In all of these aspects of the business, we employ our learners at a living wage, and we also train individuals from our Workplace Essential Skills program. So we'll just go back and you see here Voila Essentials. Voila Essentials is a smaller endeavor that came out of the Voila Cleaning Company, and it was started by a learner in our Workplace Essential Skills program. Her name was Misty. So she was interested in environmentally friendly cleaning products because her son had allergies to a lot of chemical products. So Misty, with the support of the staff and some funding, basically developed Voila Essentials, which offers environmentally friendly cleaning products, and we sell them here in the impact market, which I will get to. So she went through the entire development stage of that business. So the market research, the actual production, and then the launching of the business. And it still exists today and has grown to include new products lines. And Misty's actually employed in our cleaning company as well. So just bringing you back here, our most recent social enterprise is called the Impact Market. And I heard Darcy mention 10,000 villages. So they're actually a vendor at the Impact Market. So this opened in our new building, which you can see just in the corner here. It's called the Social Enterprise Hub. And the Social Enterprise Hub, it's a collaboration between 4 nonprofits, as well as social entrepreneurs, micro-entrepreneurs. It's a really dynamic workplace. We've just moved in here a year and a half ago. So the Impact Market opened on the ground floor of our building. And it sells products that are social, environmental, local, and cultural. We have 60 vendors right now. Another example of a vendor would be Clink Coffee through Toronto, through the John Howard Society. So that's fairly recent, and Voila Essentials, the line of cleaning products, sells their products there. So just looking at Voila and as an example, we say that Voila has a triple bottom line. So people, which would be the training and employment side of our business, we employ, like I said, program participants from the Learning Exchange. We try to employ people at above minimum wage. As the business grows, we build opportunities for program participants for more employment. The Planet, which would be, the Voila Essentials piece, using environmentally friendly cleaning products, and then Profit, which at this point is going back in to the business to help with growth. So 3 years ago, we started a 5-year SROI project, so social return on investment, to actually look at our entire service delivery model and look at the return on investment for the model itself and then also for the social enterprises. So at this point in the project, the return on investment is for every $1 invested, approximately $5 is created in social and economic value. And we have 2 more years to go in the project. But as part of this, we were able to really revamp all of our measurements and look at back to the theory of change. What is it that we're trying to do, and are our businesses supporting this, and how is it all working as one cohesive service delivery model? So to date, at the end of 2017, we've worked with 439 participants, and that would be in a combination of our programs, as well as training, 77 trained in our social enterprise and 21 employed. I just thought that I would end with somebody who's actually went through the programs. This is Sandra, and I'll just let you read the story, but she's currently employed full-time with Stone Soup at our Stone Soup YMCA Cafe, and she came through the Workplace Essential Skills program. So she also lives in the neighborhood where we work, the Waterloo Village, which is one of the priority neighborhoods. Just don't want to click too quickly. So just in summary, that's how our organization came to work in social enterprise and what it looks like for us, I guess, on a day-to-day level. I'm looking forward to questions. I think I will say, just in response to the other two presenters, right now in New Brunswick, there is no social enterprise policy or strategy. And I've listed the contact here for my colleague, Mandy Burke-Evans. So she is our social enterprise developer. And part of her job is really to look at the social enterprise ecosystem in the province and across Canada, but provincially looking at what are some of the policy barriers, you know, as we do the work in social enterprises that are preventing us from scaling and from growing the businesses. So as we answer questions later, I will, you know, I'll try my best to answer, but certainly policy questions, Mandy is working quite intensively on that in our province. But thank you to everyone for listening, and thanks to Megan and to Darcy and Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. So that was our session. If anybody has any questions, you can please put them in the Q&A box and I'll read them out for them to be answered. While we wait, I have a question to start off with. Dana, I know you mentioned at the end there kind of about policy barriers, and Kyle, you'd mentioned about having to have 6 members, so the process of incorporation can sometimes be a challenge. I was wondering if there are any other policy barriers or challenges that if somebody was interested in starting a cooperative or a social enterprise, if there's any barriers or challenges you would kind of pop out to share about?
Hi, yeah, I can say, I think one thing that comes up, you know, because I'm coming from a pretty operational perspective with this, is that a social enterprise and our social enterprises are still businesses. So all of the challenges that come with starting a business in general certainly apply to social enterprise. And then you have the added piece of the social mission of the business. So, you know, not only are you starting up a new business, but you're also starting one in which you want to provide, you know, rich training opportunities in our case for individuals. So as a startup, it just adds another layer to the business and can definitely be a challenge.
About Kyle or Darcy, is there anything you'd like to add? Your mics are muted, just in case you are trying to talk.
Just a quick point. I mentioned a couple policy issues we see sometimes in cooperatives, more so in Saskatchewan than anywhere else. But by far and above, one of the biggest things we hear from groups we work with is accessing capital. You know, having pools of capital available for organizations with social purposes or even community-based projects is hugely helpful when it is available. And there are great examples in, for example, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Alberta, that are looking at community investment models. These are hugely helpful and do allow communities to do really great work.
Good.
I guess the one piece I would add there, and echoing those sentiments and building upon it, is on the theme of access to capital, is just that when you are when you're in a nonprofit structure or cooperative structure, you just can't rely upon the same personal equity that you can when starting a small business. You can't put your own house on the line for that initial startup capital. So that often requires granting funding, which is difficult to come by, particularly in a time when there's less government money flowing towards these types of things. So, but there are funds that have existed, and we're seeing good impact by ones that start to pair the development granting with coaching and with business development support, so that those two things go along hand in hand. Just because access to capital and access to grant funding, unless the group or the lead accessing it has the capacity to actually use it properly, it's insufficient. So pairing coaching and capacity building along with some of the granting operations is a way that a few funds are going, and we've seen support. We have support for that here.
Oh, okay. So we do have a question, and it is: do any of you work with community foundations to assist in funding programs or in capital acquisitions?
I can go ahead.
Go ahead, Kyle.
On that.
Okay.
Sorry. So a lot of the groups we do work with are in rural Indigenous communities, oftentimes in remote communities. Many of them aren't able to access some community foundations. Here in Saskatoon, the community foundations, our community foundation is quite active. So some of the groups we've talked with in Saskatoon area have been very optimistic for funding from that direction, but more often than not, it isn't a viable source for groups we work with.
One of the examples that we have in Manitoba, in particular in Winnipeg, I'm actually on the board for the Jubilee Fund. It's a small charitable investment fund that provides, generally works with the Assiniboine Credit Union, providing loan guarantees to poverty reduction initiatives. Often those are social enterprises. And the Winnipeg Foundation moved $500,000 from its endowment side of the fund into purchasing our investment credits so that we could lean against those for providing loan guarantees. So that is a partnership not on the granting side of a community foundation, but on the endowment side, which we think provides a bunch of opportunity there.
Okay, we have another question from Shirley Thompson. She asks, what programming is available geared for First Nations and remote communities?
I could again jump in with some of this. Certainly, INAC is a primary source of funds in some of the groups that we've worked with. Another big one has been some of the RDAs, regional development groups. In Western Canada, we have Western Diversification. Out east, I know there is the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. They always have a commitment in their funding programs for First Nations development. So we've had some success applying for those. And provincially, I know that it varies widely in the types of supports available for Indigenous economic development. I can speak a little bit more on some local organizations. In Saskatchewan, of course, we have the Clarence Campo Fund for Métis groups. In Manitoba, of course, there's the Louis Riel Capital Corporation and the Manitoba Economic Development there. So there's a lot of provincially organized groups, but federally, those are the two we've had most success with, definitely INAC and Western Diversification.
If anybody else wants to add?
Hey Shirley, I don't think I will be able to provide more than you know, Shirley, as we often work with you on this file. So I think Kyle's insights are a bit bigger. But you know, we're seeing Community Futures being one of the organizations that's working there, and that's who we've worked the most with in rural communities. And then as well as well, you're familiar with the Northern Healthy Foods Initiative, which has some limited social enterprise work that they're doing there. But I can't quite, I won't be able to provide you more than you already know, Shirley, sorry.
Okay, so I'll move to our next question from Karen Guth. We would like to know if there is an idea bank, and anybody can
I see that question here. And with the struggling with the inspiration, I think Karen has a follow-up question there for that. I am unfamiliar with an ideas bank, with the exception of there's lots of communications that's going on spreading some of these ideas. So for a while, enterprising nonprofits had a news source, a news feed that was doing articles on social enterprises that were developing. I think those are all still online. So if you search enterprising nonprofits, you'll be able to find through there. My organization, the Canadian Community Economic Development Network, If you find our social media channels, you'll be able to read news about social enterprise developments. And then there are other communications bodies in the United States. I would highly suggest connecting with or subscribing to the Social Enterprise Alliance, SEA. They do great communications down there. It's a bit of a different context, but a lot of ideas are put out by them. I'll leave it there. Maybe Kyle or Dana have other ones that they turn to for inspiration.
Yeah, and the follow-up question is that we struggle with the inspiration part. So if Kyle or Dana has anything to add, I'll give a few seconds.
Just to jump in, I can't come on any idea banks per se, but for those interested maybe in great ideas in the cooperative sector, Cooperatives First, one of our main tasks is advocating for the co-op sector. Our blogs focus a lot on different stories across Western Canada and the world, really. There's also stories.coop. That's a great source of different co-ops in different communities doing really cool things.
Okay, so our next question is from Jennifer Neufeld. And she says, I work with the rural campus of a public college in Alberta, and we are exploring how to develop a business incubator for the community. Have any of you worked with any post-secondary educational institutions? And if so, what has that looked like?
If you ask me this question in like a year from now, I'll have it pretty good because a bunch are coming online in the Manitoba context. Red River College is looking to launch a social innovation incubator. It's still taking shape. That's located here in Winnipeg. I know that University College of the North has kicked around the idea. I don't know how far along they are with the potential of that. The University of Winnipeg here is launching what they call the Community Enterprise Link, which will be doing similar work to that. And even our startup world here with an organization called North Forge has announced interest in going into this space. So we're about to see 4 or 5 of them come online nearly simultaneously. So monitoring that might be able to provide inspiration. In terms of within my network, the folks I'm most familiar with who've been done the most business incubation, I would suggest checking out Common Good Solutions in Halifax and Nova Scotia, as they're very busy and have some contracts with some of the incubation stuff. I'm unsure if they have partnered with or what their relationships with public universities would be.
Cooperatives First has partnered with the University of Saskatchewan in the past. We worked with them to develop a course on governance in cooperatives and organizations, tremendously successful, and had over 400 people apply. So our experience working with universities has been fairly good. If you're considering creating an incubator, I always advocate for the co-op model in that sphere. There's a really successful tech incubator that is cooperatively owned in Kelowna, and it's drawn in lots of great entrepreneurship in that area.
Okay, so our next question is from Katie Blunt, and she asks, what are some different ways to communicate impact? With the learning exchange, you have a solid SROI, but for these social enterprises that have not collected data for SROI, how can they communicate the impact they have in their communities?
Hi, Katie. I can speak a little bit about that because, you know, even as I put the SROI in our presentation, I think where we were 3 years ago and we had, you know, our data collection methods, we had hardly anything, and we were asking the same kind of question. With SROI, you know, some of the cons are that for community organizations, they're expensive, and a lot of times we don't have the resources to actually do that evaluation. So a couple of things that we did, I think I mentioned in my presentation, you know, St. John, the community is quite strong and very willing to provide support. So we you know, talked to or worked with Living SJ, which I'd said is an initiative here looking at ending generational poverty, and they have an evaluation person who helped us. We also worked with the United Way. At first we did a lot of case studies and stories of participants of our programs, but it really took, I think, outside support for us to even develop any internal tracking. And in 3 years, we've come quite a ways. I'm not sure if that helps, but those were sort of informal ways for us to develop that.
I will just advocate for the power of storytelling and storytelling about the challenge or the problem that is being overcome by the work that's occurring. That allows you to showcase the impact without having to go as much down the route of an intense social SROI. We're hesitant for groups to do SROIs because they are so intensive, as well as if all the stakeholders that are interested in the SROI don't agree on the initial premise of the evaluation, you can kind of drive a truck through those things. So making sure that you're all on the same page with like the funders and with those who you're going to present the information to is pretty crucial. So at the baseline, at the really early days, building in some storytelling will really help with, especially when that evaluation is likely going to be a communications piece.
Okay, so our next question is from Tracy Rannick. Regarding the CFDC involvement, wondering whether access to capital has a micro-granting component.
I'm unfamiliar with micro-granting components. We have a very small one here at the Social Enterprise of Manitoba that primarily comes in the form of supports for consultants and for coaching. So I can't speak to that as well.
In some of the projects we've worked on, a lot of some funding can come from CFDCs, and microgranting does help with access to capital. Interest rates can still be a bit higher in those cases, but without a doubt, they definitely have a huge role to play in across rural and Western Canada for sure.
Okay. So our last question is from Joanna Bateman, and she asks, can Dana elaborate on ways the learning exchange initially reached low literacy participants?
Hi, Joanna. Yes, I can answer this. So, I mean, back when we started in 1984, I can't really speak to that, but I do know there was a lot of neighborhood involvement. So I had talked a little bit about the priority neighborhoods. We spend a lot of time trying to embed ourselves in other community resources that aren't necessarily related to education or employment. So for example, now I go to other community programs and I present, but I don't present about the learning exchange programs per se. We do an exercise or something, you know, related to employment interests, just to build that connection. And our biggest referral source right now is actually word of mouth in the community. So a lot of people come in, we accept walk-ins and we love when people walk in to ask questions. And that is the majority of our referrals, or people just walking in because they heard about it from someone who took a community program somewhere. The other thing that we do, I present to different departments of government. So I present to social development case managers, and we've worked really hard to have a strong relationship with them, to clients of post-secondary education, training, and labor. So either they're hearing about that, the client is hearing about the information there, or we're actually getting a formal referral from a case manager. And I'm just trying to think, like I said, it's very intentional that we're out in the community and we're easy to access for people, but we've had inquiries certainly from other groups in Moncton and Fredericton, which are located in New Brunswick, about how we reach people, because I think it's something that, you know, other organizations are trying to get better at. The other thing we do is after programs, other community programs end, I'll go in and talk to the group about next steps after that program. And if education or employment is one of the goals, a lot of times maybe people don't connect right then, or even 3 or 6 months later, but then, you know, maybe they remember it a year later when they are ready to work on those sorts of goals. So I hope that helped, and I'd be happy to connect, individually and give you more information.
Thank you, Dana. There was one other question that I missed. So this one will be the last question. Do any of you have a template or model that social enterprises, nonprofits can use to get started and follow step by step as they go along? If so, what website could it be accessed at?
So I'll jump in. I'm the one who accidentally closed that question, so my apologies to the anonymous attendee who put that in there. I would suggest checking out the Social Enterprise Institute. We've partnered with them for some of their development work, and they've got a web-based learning platform that's been launched that ranges from free early access webinars and coaching right through to eventually you hit a fee-for-service paywall, and then you get into some really in-depth workshops from there. And it's presented by, all the content is created by social enterprise developers and leaders from across Canada. We think it's pretty high quality stuff. So Social Enterprise Institute is where you can check out.
From a co-op perspective, one of the things Co-operatives First does is try to simplify the process of setting up a new cooperative business. So if you check out our website, cooperativesfirst.com, you'll see lots of stories about different types of co-ops. We also have tools such as our Guide to Group Entrepreneurship, which are all geared to guiding groups through this process, setting up new businesses, and our tools and resources kits that we provide to the communities we work with have sample bylaws, template policies, things that can be ported into communities to make the process of setting up a new venture that much easier.
Okay, so I would like to thank our presenters, Dorothy Penner, Kyle White, and Dana Lutz for their great informative presentations, as well as the audience for their participation and questions.